Sure. So limerence, I think, is best described as an altered mental state. And about half the population experience it in the early stages of love. So I think of limerence as it was defined by Dorothy Tenoff, who originally coined the word and tried to kind of capture the idea in her book, Love and Limerence. And it's the experience of being in limerence is extraordinary. So it doesn't feel like everyday life. It feels as though you're almost in a different cognitive mode for your brain. And so it's characterized by emotional extremes. So the person that you're infatuated with, that you've become limerent for, so we tend to call that person the limerent object. And that's quite kind of deliberate word use by Dorothy Tenoff, because it captures that point that we are objectifying this person. We're projecting our own kind of romantic fantasies and our own romantic desires onto this other person, rather than seeing them as a kind of whole person with flaws and as a real human being. We do tend to, as limerents, objectify that person. They get raised into a state where they're kind of a romantic paragon. They're like the perfect partner. And that altered mental state includes things like feelings of euphoria. So you feel, high just from being around that person. Feelings of a very powerful connection. So limerents say, these ideas of true love or twin souls meeting, or, meeting your soulmate. Limerents will often report that, or this is the first time I've ever understood that, or I've ever felt that, because they feel that there's an extraordinary sense of connection to this other person, that there's something unusually attractive about them, that they really are special. And limerence also, whilst you get that euphoria and the exhilaration and the elation and the excitement and all of that romantic promise and potential, limerence also comes bundled in with some negative experiences. So things like real anxiety, if you think maybe your feelings aren't reciprocated, and you're if your limerent object behaves in a way that makes you feel like, oh, they don't like me, they're not interested in me, you'll get the opposite emotional swing into a sort of state of anxiety. Now, all of those phenomena are ultimately based in the brain. So we understand what euphoria is. We understand what intense desire is in terms of the brain. We understand what anxiety is. And we understand as well about that sense of connection to another person, and the feeling that they are uniquely special to you and more desirable than anybody else. And those are all normal functions of the brain. So there's kind of three systems in the brain that are particularly important in that the sensation of being limerent in the early stages. So the first is the arousal system. So that's all about the sort of excitement, the energy, the drive, the racing heart and sweaty palms, and that kind of autonomic response that you get when you're really excited. But it's also in terms of thoughts as well. So your thoughts race. You feel like you're thinking faster. And people talk about how, the whole world seems more colourful and vibrant and alive since I met this person. It really does feel like you're kind of transformed, because your brain is almost kind of in that heightened state of arousal, that heightened state of activity. So that system is kind of based around the neurotransmitter noradrenaline. The Americans call it norepinephrine. But that's what gives you that drive and that arousal and that excitement. The second brain system is the reward system, and that's based around dopamine. So that's probably much more commonly known in kind of popular society. And dopamine is that drive that makes you want things. So dopamine is often kind of portrayed as being the pleasure chemical, but that actually isn't right. So dopamine, it's a way of assessing reward within the brain, within the reward system of the brain. So the actual feelings of euphoria and the feelings of pleasure they can be triggered by dopamine, but they're actually mediated within the brain by different neurotransmitters. Seems to be kind of endocannabinoids and opioids within the brain. And so you can get this very peculiar scenario in the brain, which is going to be, important later, where wanting is being driven by dopamine, but liking is separate. So you can like things that you didn't particularly want. If you're full and you're satiated and you're not hungry, still having a sugary drink is pleasurable, because the taste of sugar is pleasurable. So you can like things even if you don't want them, but even more importantly, you can want things after you've stopped liking them. So it's the peculiarity of the reward system that wanting can be kind of uncoupled from liking. And if you get trapped in a state where that wanting is really powerful and a kind of constant drive, it doesn't even matter anymore if you like the thing that you're wanting. So the reward system is the second system that's relevant. The third system that's relevant is the bonding system. And that's mediated by oxytocin and vasopressin. So those are actually hormones or neuropeptides that are released into the brain, and they regulate social reward and attachment. So being attached to another person, originally, of course, primarily attachment to a mother, and then as you go through life, attachments to other people, friends, and then romantic partners potentially in the future, that is being mediated by the bonding system within the brain. Now, limerence seems to be a state when those three systems are all firing at the same time, and the consequence is that one person becomes a very powerful natural reward. So you get a natural high from being around that person. And that's very good for forming a pair bond and mating. Mm-hmm. So from a kind of reproductive perspective, it's useful to have these systems built into our brain that will make us really powerfully want somebody that, our subconscious has recognized as, they could be a very valuable mate, or they're a very desirable mate. And so that makes you want that person and seek to bond with that person very powerfully. So that's all good. So far things are okay. And for many people experiencing that, myself included, you would just think, well, that's just love. All of those things that I've just described, the elation, the euphoria, the intense desire, the kind of thoughts constantly being on them, all of that people would describe as being, that's just love. But half of the population do not experience the state of limerence. So they are perfectly able to fall in love, perfectly able to form a pair bond, have a rewarding romantic relationship, have children, have a full life, but they don't get into that altered mental state. It, for them, doesn't feel as though their whole mind has been transformed, their whole world has been transformed by this enormous natural high that that limerence experience when they're in those kind of early stages of love. Where things go wrong, and where most of the people that I talk to on the blog are suffering, is that if you cannot form a healthy relationship with the person that you're limerent for, the limerence doesn't just go away, it progresses. And so it may be that that person is unavailable, it may be that they don't reciprocate your feelings, so it's unrequited. It may be that they are giving you mixed messages, and sometimes they seem as though they're interested, but other times they're not. Might be that you're not available because you're already committed to somebody else, and yet you've met a new person that's triggered limerence. So there's lots of obviously reasons why love might not be smooth in terms of the progression of events. But what happens with limerence is that natural high that you're getting can drive your reward system into a new state, a state of behavioral addiction. And so we know this from other behavioral addictions. So gambling is the best characterized, but there are other sort of things like gaming addictions and shopping addictions and love addiction and so on. Limerence, I think, late stage limerence is well described as addiction to another person. And so your reward system gets into a state where that wanting drive from dopamine has been reinforced so strongly that it feels irresistible. You've just got this insatiable wanting desire for the other person. At the same time, our executive brain, so the kind of the most evolutionary modern part of our brain that should be providing context to us, that should be helping us judge the value of a reward and the value of a desire and whether it's safe to act, that gets desensitized and that gets weakened. So you can end up in this state exactly like substance addictions, where you crave something with an irresistible wanting drive, but you don't feel able to control it. You don't feel able to exert willpower to stop seeking that source of reward relentlessly. And that is, in terms of the changes within the brain, and this is at the level of synapses, getting stronger or getting weaker, that is a state of addiction. So it's sometimes referred to as incentive sensitization. So one reward dominates everything, overwhelms everything. It's the only thing that you really care about. It's the most, powerful motivating force in your life. And that is what it feels like if you've got stuck in limerence for another person for too long, and you've sort of transitioned into this state of person addiction rather than the kind of euphoric, exciting fireworks excitement of the early stages of limerence. So hopefully that covers most of the territory on the neuroscience.